Hello and welcome to Marketing Global Edition with me, Jasmine Montgomery. I am on my own today as Piers is off with man flu, which, as we all know, is a far more severe kind of cold than any woman could ever understand. Indeed, I think it's really interesting that having a cold is an irregular verb, conjugated differently depending on the pronoun. So he has a cold, you have the flu, I have pneumonia, is how you conjugate that verb. So here I am, but I thought I'd chat about an interesting thing that was on the news a lot this week, and that is, in its own way, a branding story. And that is the news that President Donald Trump has lived up to his campaign promise of delivering world peace by rebranding the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. It is an interesting piece of geographical rebranding. Mexico, of course, is delighted. It has inspired Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum Pardo to suggest renaming North America as America Mexicana. And I think she is right that this is the moment for America to rebrand. You know, international business machines became IBM when it felt that its name no longer represented an accurate description of the brand. It was no longer international but global, it was no longer business but did personal computers, and it wasn't just machines, it was tech. And in the same way, I think that the United States of America has become obsolete as a name, and nonsensical really in the face of sort of immense polarization in the country. It is manifestly not united anymore. The Civil War may not yet be a military battle, yet America is a country definitely in the midst of an epic culture war. So on the one side, we have our MAGA, Fox News, Chick-fil-A, Glock, Dairy Queen, My Pillow people. And on the other side are MSNBC, Patagonia, Nike, Whole Foods, Beyond Meat, Chobani, Blue Bottle Coffee people. Even the cats are polarized, with a national consumer study conducted by Simmons Research showing that cats in Democrat houses eat Fancy Feast, while Republican cats eat Meow Mix. So the term united seems like it needs to go. Also, the timing feels right. When a brand's basic values have changed, it is a moment to consider signaling that change in your branding in a big way. And the USA has ceased to stand for the things that characterized it for the past 100 years. Democracy, liberty, the welcoming of the tired and huddled masses to the possibility of the American dream, the shining city on the hill. These have been replaced by a new promise of America first. And if Trump were to rebrand America entirely in the spirit of MAGA, I wonder what he would call it. He might be inspired by King Mswati III of Swaziland, who, incidentally, is the last remaining absolute monarch in Africa. So not just in bringing back absolute monarchy to America, apparently they miss it since we, the British, abandoned them to their republicanism in 1776. In 2018, King Mswati of Swaziland changed his country's name to the Kingdom of 𝐒𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻, which is not, as it sounds, the digital version of the country, but a new name designed both to shed the country's colonial past and to prevent it from being confused with Switzerland. Apparently hordes of confused tourists were turning up in Swaziland in search of artisanal chocolates and cuckoo clocks. But I think that the formation of a new ruling power, free from the constraints of checks and balances and supported as it is by the oligarchy of billionaire tech bros, could take a leaf out of 𝐒𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻 and maybe go for something that sounds wonderfully digital. 𝐼merica, perhaps. Or maybe Elon Musk would suggest rebranding it to a single letter. The letter Y, perhaps, might be most appropriate. And President, or dare I now call him King Trump, might go further. In the spirit of the Gulf of America, we might now expect the Pacific to become the American Ocean. But then what do we do about the Atlantic? With a now entirely America-centric worldview, of course, the Pacific Ocean might become the Western Ocean and the Atlantic could become the Eastern Ocean. In the case of America just becoming known by a single letter, call it Z, these bodies of water could be Z1 and Z2. You may think this sounds fantastical, but countries have changed their names before. Burma became Myanmar, Ceylon became Sri Lanka, Persia to Iran, Siam became Thailand, Rhodesia, Zimbabwe, Upper Volta to Burkina Faso, and East Pakistan to Bangladesh, to name a few. A rather intriguing one, I always think, is Zaire to the Democratic Republic of Congo in 1997. So the name Zaire had been imposed by dictator Mobutu Sese Seko in 1971, but after his overthrow, the country restored its former name. And Democratic Republic of Congo was chosen to reflect its history and distinguish it from the neighbouring Republic of Congo. Frankly, I'm not entirely certain that this is sufficient to really pull those two countries apart, nor am I quite convinced that it is its commitment to democracy that most differentiates the DRC. Indeed, some might say that it is neither democratic nor a republic. But sadly, no one asked me. If they had, I would have offered the name the Cobalty Coppery Congo, because the DRC are the ones with all the lovely natural resources so attractive to its target market, the rest of the world, and because of its delightful use of alliteration. Incidentally, the ruler of Zaire I referred to earlier had a great grip on branding. He gave himself his full name, which was, I'm going to try and pronounce it, Mobutu Sese Seko Kuku Mbendu wa Zabanga, meaning the all-powerful warrior who, because of his endurance and inflexible will to win, goes from conquest to conquest, leaving fire in his wake. I could see some enormous possibilities here for President Trump in terms of personal branding. You might think this doesn't really happen these days very much, but India is considering changing its name to Bharat, the Hindi name for India, presumably to shed its colonial history, reinforce the BJP's Hindu nationalist vision, and disorient all the hippies heading to Goa. During the G20 summit in Delhi on September 9th and 10th last year, Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister, sat behind a nameplate inscribed with Bharat on it, so it's clearly under consideration. I think that if a country is considering a name change, that it should have a really great reason for doing so, to shed its colonial history, to reduce confusion with another country or another unfortunate association. Turkey, for example, has shifted to Türkiye to reduce its association with Christmas dinner. True story. According to the White House, Trump made the change in the Gulf of Mexico, now Gulf of America, as part of a program of restoring names that honor American greatness. This is undoubtedly as good a reason as any. And a name change, of course, is, let's face it, a much quicker and easier way to restore American greatness than by upholding democratic norms and elections, ensuring the peaceful transfer of power, supporting democratic institutions, maintaining checks and balances, accepting congressional and judicial oversight, discouraging violence and extremism, or embodying personal values of honesty, respect for others, or even healthy eating. So, it's indeed so easy would a name change be to really fulfill Trump's MAGA ambitions that I actually can't believe the president hasn't proposed it yet for the nation itself. If you are listening to this from a country that you think would benefit from a name change, do also consider learning from Trump's launch tactics. When you change a brand's name, it's always a good idea to have a really epic launch moment, a sort of PR stunt, if you will, that lets everyone know that you're launching something new. So Burger King in 2018 launched their Whopper Detour. This was a great promo where they offered a Whopper for 1 cent, but only if customers ordered it while inside a McDonald's using the Burger King app. But it worked brilliantly. They got 1.5 million app downloads, totally hijacked McDonald's locations, and it was really savage marketing at its best. So perhaps Trump could offer US citizenship to anyone from South America, but only if they make the application from inside North Korea. There was also a great stunt with Greggs the Bakers. It's a UK bakery chain that's beloved amongst truckers for its very meat-filled sausage rolls and pasties. And in 2019, they launched a vegan sausage roll and marketed it with a kind of mock Apple-style product video. And Piers Morgan, a rather controversial UK media figure, slammed it, calling it PC-ravaged nonsense. And Greggs trolled him back on Twitter, X, and the sales exploded. And the product became one of Greggs' biggest successes ever. So, of course, Trump is if you were looking at this as an example of something, I mean, he is rudely trolled all the time by unreasonable proponents of freedom and democracy around the world. But luckily his base have blocked all these horrible people on social media, and in any case, X's algorithm screens out all that liberal nonsense. So he'd have to provoke someone with a big megaphone and the ear of his base. Perhaps he could launch the new name whilst coming out in favour of basic education and healthcare for people of colour or women, thereby causing Joe Rogan to troll him and create a Twitter storm. An X storm. But, Trump's announcement of the Gulf of America, Rebrand, was made while flying in Air Force One over the very Gulf itself. And he doubled down with an announcement that the 9th of February, the date of this great launch, will now forever be known as Gulf of America Day, which is terrific news for the Gulf of America. It's quite bad news for pizzas, dentists and bathtubs, as the 9th of February was already designated as a day of observance for National Pizza Day, National Toothache Day, and National Read in the Bathtub Day. On a side note, my personal favourite annual observance day is International Talk Like a Pirate Day, which you'll be wanting to make a note of in your diaries, is September 19th. And on this day, people worldwide swap normal speech for pirate lingo, with, popular phrases like "ahoy matey, shiver me timbers," and "where be the rum?" But in all of this, you have to feel slightly sorry for Google, who are now having to label maps of the world differently, depending on where you search from. So users in the US see Gulf of America, but not users in Mexico, obviously. But then they already have to contend with displaying different names for disputed places, such as the Persian Gulf versus the Arabian Gulf, or the Sea of Japan versus the East Sea. But Google is helpfully towing the Trumpian line. And more power to the president for his inspirational name change. Indeed, I feel inspired and would like to suggest to our government here in England that we think through some of our geographical branding. Of course, we have the English Channel, sorry les Français, but perhaps we could take a look at the North Sea's branding. Maybe the English Sea, or perhaps the British Basin. Being from the United Kingdom, I would quite like our government to rebrand the country itself, because I never know when scrolling down one of those interminable lists of countries in an e-commerce site's delivery options, whether to find us under United Kingdom, Great Britain or England. I would like to propose that we rebrand as Britannia. I think it would give us a much needed air of grandeur, which I fear has been lost in recent years. It might rekindle delusions of empire building, which could be regrettable, although perhaps we could start by retaking the United States of America, which I fear is in need of our help. And happily, it would now come with the additional bonus territory of the Gulf of America, which I would instantly propose rebranding to the Gulf of Britannia. I'm just off to call Google and let their map people know. Bye for now.
Marketing Global Edition is sponsored by 𝐕𝐢𝐿𝐴𝐷𝐸, the ad generator for small businesses that serves you effective and affordable ads in seconds. And by 7Brands, the international advertising and branding agency that has worked with clients around the world from Coca-Cola to Facebook.